Hello beauties, and welcome back to the Bumpy Bones Locksport channel. Now I'm going to continue my video series on how to pick locks open at different belt levels, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at the yellow belt level locks in the Lockpickers United Belt System. Now my intention in this video is to help the beginning lockpicker progress in their lockpicking journey, so I still want to use tools that I would recommend to a beginning lockpicker. So I'm going to be using the tools out of the Covert Instruments F&G set. So that's going to include the 25 thousandths short hook and the 40 thousandths 2-in-1 precision turner here. And this is a set that you can get for under $10, and it's a professional high quality set. I've seen lock pickers create video series where they open locks from the white belt level all the way to black belt level just with these two tools here. You do get the quint rake in this set as well, but I'm only focusing on the single pin picking, so I'm only going to be using these two tools in this video here. Now, let's talk about the differences between a yellow belt level lock and a white belt level lock. So, in my previous video, we took a look at the white belt level, which included this Master Lock #3. And at the white belt level, you encounter locks that are up to 4 pins with standard driver pins in it. Now, at the yellow belt level, what we're going to encounter is we're going to encounter locks that are between 4 and 5 pins, and we're going to start seeing security pins in these locks. And so when I talk about security pins, I got a picture of some of the pins that I have in my collection here. And so if we look at the bottom row here, in the bottom two rows, these are pins that I got out of like the residential doorways like Schlage, Kwikset. These are kind of like the bigger locks in that. The top row are pins that I got from padlocks like the Master Lock, American Lock, Pack Lock. So they're a little bit thinner, but they all do the same thing. So if we just look at the bottom two rows here, at the bottom row here we have our standard driver pin, so that's that nice smooth cylinder. And then we move on to our spool pin, and this is probably what we're going to see the most in the yellow belt is the spool pin. And what does the spool pin do? Well, what we have is we have this carved out middle, so it looks like the spool that you would get a spool of thread on. So you got the thin middle with the thicker caps on that. And you can actually get those caps in different sizes. So if we go to the row up here, there are 4 spool pins here that have different size caps on it. And those actually do make a big difference when you are picking the locks. I've got a Lockwood here that's a blue belt level lock that's got spool pins in it, but they are very fine spool pins, and they are a pain in the butt to pick. The deeper the spool, the more feedback that you get. The thinner the spool, it's just harder to feel and all that. But what does a spool pin do? And so if we take a look at this picture that I got here from the Art of Lockpicking, we've got the spool pin, and the spool is kind of raised above the shear line here. And so we have this gap between the shear line with the casing and the cylinder here, or the core here. And so what that's going to allow you to do, that's going to allow you to rotate that, but only to a certain point. And that's what we call a false set. And so here we have a nice little image of the false set here. So we can only rotate it so far. And when we go to lift it, what you're going to feel is you're going to feel pushback on your tension tool. And that's called counter rotation. So you can see kind of towards the end, you got that counterclockwise rotation. That's counter rotation. And you're going to need that in order to set the pin, because what you have to do is you've got to get the security pin past this lip here, and so you got to rotate that just so that you can get that bottom cap up and up above the shear line there. And we'll take a look at that in a little bit more detail in a little bit as well. We then have our mushroom pins, and those are very similar to spool pins with the exception of that you only have the cap on the bottom and the kind of cut out in the middle is slanted, so it looks like a mushroom. And then we have our serrated pins. And serrated pins are a bit funky. they mimic the feel and the sound of a set pin. And so if you go back to our white belt level lock video, and when we're actually picking the lock, and I would go through and it's like, okay, pin 1 is set, and when I say that, you heard this very distinct click. That's the sound and the feel that these serrated pins are mimicking. So what you have is you have these grooves on your pin, or serrations on your pin, and when those hit the shear line, they click, and they move a little bit. So they're supposed to mimic the falset. Now, I'm not going to cover serrated pins a lot in this video because I want to save these for the green belt level video. Because in the American Lock 1100 series, you can actually hear the difference between the clicks of the serrations and the click of a setting pin. And I really want to showcase that in that video. Now, we do have other shape pins. So here is a T pin that you would get out of like the Schilling collapsible Bible. I do have one of those here that I can show you in just a little bit. And then if we go towards the top row here with the ones that we got out of our padlocks, we've got our standard driver pins, that nice smooth cylinder. We got spool pins of different sizes, and that actually does have a impact on the falset in the feel of picking these. I always like picking the longer spool pins because you get a better falset. The thinner ones aren't quite as pronounced, but you also run into some other issues when you're dealing with really small security pins. And what will happen with that is if your security pin is too small, so say if I took that small security pin and I put that here, you would see that would put the security pin below the shear line here. And you need to watch out for that because if that security pin goes below the shear line, you can capture the spring in the when you rotate the cylinder. So between the casing and the cylinder, or the casing and the core, you can actually trap the spring there and break it and break your lock and all that. So that's why when you have like a 0 pin, you really want to be careful because you can encounter situations where this security pin will be below our shear line here. We then have a serrated spool pin, and these I got out of like the American Lock 1100 series. You won't really see these at the yellow belt level. You might see it at the orange belt level, but you really start encountering that at the green belt level. And then we got our serrated pin here, and I just talked about those. And then this silver pin here is a fun pin. So these are anti-bump pins or barrel pins. And what we have is we have this smooth center, so it's just like a standard driver pin. But then we've got these grooves on the top and the bottom, and the actual kind of that groove, that cutout, makes the top and the bottom a bit thinner than the actual core. And so what that is designed to do is if you go to rake or bump the lock open, you're going to bump this up to the shear line here, but then this is going to still be in the cylinder and prevent the lock from opening. The other thing is when you're picking these, they will kind of mimic a serrated pin. And so when you push this up to the shear line here and you get this here, it's almost like a serrated pin, so you just want to be a little bit aware of that. They can be a bit challenging to get. I've got a Hager H1 core that has 7 of these guys in it, and it took me a while to get through 7 of them because they are a pain in the butt. Normally, you don't see these until like the blue belt level. However, there is a yellow belt level lock that does have one of these. I got this out of the American Lock 5200, which is a yellow belt level lock. So, now I've talked about some of the different security pins here. How do we know what locks are what level? And so I'm going to start showing the Lockpickers United Belt System a little bit more in my videos here because it is a really good resource that you can go to in order to find a lock at the current level that you're picking, or say you've got yellow belt down under your belt and you want to start moving up to the orange belt level. So what locks are we going to look at next and all of that. So you can go to the Lockpickers United Belt Explorer, and I might have a link to that in the description. And you can see here there are a bunch of yellow belt level locks. We got Abus, we've got an Ace laminated, we've got the American Lock 5200, we have an Alpha, we got some that I had never heard of, we've got Brinks, we've got Berg, we've got, if I keep scrolling down, you'll have your Master Lock. So you can actually go through here and find the different locks and even different types of locks. So, we got our pin tumblers. Now, in my videos, I'm only going to be looking at pin tumblers. I'm not going to look at level. I'm not going to look at dimple. I'm just doing pin tumblers because that's what I do. I want to start looking at some dimple locks in the future. I do want to get my hands into some of the picking of the lever locks, but that requires very specialized tools, and I don't have those tools. But the other thing that I really like about this is that we can go through and say, we want to take a look at the Master Lock 140 here, and you have pictures of the lock. So if you have a lock but you don't quite know what it is, you can actually go here and click on a lock and say, oh, I think this is the 140. Or, yep, it matches the pictures of the 140. But also, people have uploaded images of the pins for some of the locks. You don't get this for all of them, but you do get it for a lot of them. So we can actually take a look at this and say, hey, with this Master Lock 140, we've got 4 pins with 4 standard pins. Now, the other thing that we want to look at is if we take a look at another picture here, wait a minute here, this is a little different. We've got 4 pins, but now we have spool pins and this funky serrated capsule type pin. That's an anti-bump pin. And so with the 140s, what we're noticing is that you can get some 140s that are standard driver pins, and then you can get some 140s that have spool pins in it. So, it can be a very mixed bag pins that you get with those. Likewise, if we come down to the Master Lock 930 here and take a look at this, we've got a 5-pin lock that's got 5 driver pins in it, and that's pretty standard for the 930. And so we can use this tool to go through and take a look at the different locks here. So if we come like to the Brinks 164, this is a lock that normally I can't gut, or that you can't gut, because there's a pin there that retains the core, and in order to get the core out, you gotta get that out, which is a big pain in the butt. But people out there have done it, and so we can see here that, okay, we've got a 5-pin lock, and here are 3 standard pins and 2 spool pins, but they are really small. And so, seeing that those are really small, this is going to be one of the locks that you're going to want to be really careful on, because if you have a low cut, you might actually encounter pins that go below the shear line. And so you can get a lot of really good useful information out of the LPU Belt Explorer application. So again, I'm going to have a link to this in the description. I do encourage people to go and take a look at it, and because it is a really, really good tool and all of that. All right, so let's actually take a look at some locks. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to first focus a little bit on the spool pin issue that you might encounter here. So I've got a Schlage core here, and this has the spool pin in it. So you can see if I take my tension tool here and I put it in here, I can kind of rotate this around and get into that false set pretty much immediately. Now, I mentioned prior that what we really need to start doing is watching our tension control. And the reason why we need to watch that is, let me change my focus here so that we're a bit closer. All right, and let me see if I can adjust my light here so that this comes through a little bit better. There we go. All right, so What will happen is if I go to try to force this pin up while applying heavy tension, because don't forget, in our white belt video, heavier tension was better when it came to standard spool pins. However, when we're dealing with, or not standard spool pins, standard driver pins, now that we're dealing with spool pins, because we have that false set, and you can see that black line of the core of the shear line there, if I use heavy tension here, I can't push that up. That just locks the that security pin in place. So what I actually have to do is use lighter tension. And what's going to happen is with a spool pin is as I push up, what you're going to notice, I'm going to try to demonstrate. I got another lock here that really shows it nicely in that. But what you're going to feel is you're going to feel your tension bar push upward against your finger, and you're going to let it. You're going to let your hook pick do all the work pretty much with this. And your goal with the tension is just to keep slight tension on here, because what you want to do is you don't want to drop the other pins that you set, so you need to still apply some tension, but you need to give it enough lax to get that pin up. And so if I go back and do this, you're going to notice that the core is rotating counterclockwise. That's that counter rotation. And I'm just going to kind of gently lift it. Now I am not fully there yet, but what you can see is I've got that bottom cap now at the shear line, so it's going to act as a standard pin, and I can push it up just a little bit more, and we're open. So let's actually take a look at that in an actual lock here. So I've got a Master Lock 605. This is not in the Lockpickers United Belt Explorer, but it's an equivalent of a yellow belt lock. It's similar to the 140. But this one really does show the false set and the counter rotation nicely when I can get it. One thing that I don't like about the solid brass master locks is that the tolerance of the lock, it can be funky. And so that is sometimes getting it to give you the feedback can be a challenge sometimes. And so a low tolerance lock, you can encounter issues where you don't feel the pins or you don't feel the false sets, and it just is a really funky picking experience. A high tolerance lock, you really feel the feedback, you know what you're doing, and so just a warning when it comes to the Master Lock solid brass, so the 140s, 150s, 130s, the 605 here, you can encounter that. But let's get this into the false set here. So there we go. So I've got my false set. All right. And so now what I need to do is I need to find that spool pin. So if I go with pin number 1 here, and I apply pressure, I can actually take my finger off that tension bar and the lock's not moving. Oops. So pin 1 is not our spool pin. And let me get back to our false set here. And you can kind of see what I was talking about with that tolerance there. Okay, so now I'm going to go to pin 2. And with pin 2, what's going to happen is I'm going to raise it, or I'm going to put pressure on it. Oops, and I did that a little bit too quick. And you can see that now my tension bar is moving. You can see that counter rotation. And so what I'm doing at this point is I'm just relaxing my finger and I'm letting my pick do the lifting and the rotating on me. And so I'm just going to raise it. Now I kind of felt a little bit of a pop, which is that the cap going up past the shear line. And now I'm back in a false set. Alright, but if I go back to pin 2 here and apply pressure, it's not doing anything. And so there's another spool pin in here, and we're going to do that, checking the pin 3, pin 4 for that counter rotation. So I'm going to go pin 4, or pin 3, nothing on pin 3, pin 4, okay, I got the counter rotation on pin 4. So I'm going to do the same thing, is let the hook pick do the counter rotation. And now we're open. Now, there's a problem when it comes to spool pins with this, all right? And you've seen it where I am picking open like this Abus, the Iron Rock Limited Edition padlock here. This is a Schlage core. It's got one of the anti-bump pins and 4 spool pins in here. And what will happen is I'll set 1, I'll go set 2, I'll set 3 will be loose, I'll go and set 4. 4 will drop 2 and drop 1. So I'll go back and set 1, set 2, 2 will drop 4. And it's this endless back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I've got another lock that I just got that does the same exact thing. And you'll get that with spool pins. Now, I really don't encounter that at the yellow belt level. I encounter that more at the orange belt level. But it is something to be aware of with the spool pins. And Georgia Jim has a wonderful video out there. I might recommend people go and watch it. I'll try to throw a link to it in the description, where he talks about presetting spool pins. And in the case of like that Abus there, it makes it easy because it does have that anti-bump barrel pin in number 1 that I can set, which kind of is like the serrated spool where, you know, it moves that cord just enough that I can preset the spool pins and then set 1, and that will open the lock. But it's one of those tricks that you do have to kind of get the feel for and all of that. Let's actually take a look at some of our locks here. I'm not going to open all of these. I kind of walked through the standard picking procedure on this guy here that we're going to take, but I did want to show, you know, a couple of things here. So we've got the Master Lock 146 here, and what I'm going to do is I am going to be using bottom of the keyway tension. But if I go bottom of the keyway tension here now, it's taking up a lot of the keyway. I don't have a lot of room for my pick now. And that's the other thing that we're going to start encountering at the yellow belt level is different keyways, and so we need to kind of work a little bit differently with our tension. Now, with these keyways, you can definitely go with top of the keyway tension, but if you're doing top of the keyway tension with this tension bar, you really gotta kind of rotate the lock around so that the pins are facing downward, and that's a bit of a challenge going back and forth and all of that. So what I do is I actually still use bottom of the keyway tension here, and I actually just use the small end here, and I've got enough room here. I can put that right here in the bottom. It leaves enough space where I can now get my pick in here, and let's go ahead and pick this guy open here. And what we're going to do is I'm going to start with 1, we're going to go to 2, and 2 is set. I'm going to go to 4, alright, 4 is set. We're going to go to 2, and we're open. This is one of those 140s that have a just the standard pins in it. So we don't have the security pins in that one. I got here, this is a 130. Let's see if we have the security pins in this one here. So again, I'm going to use bottom of the keyway tension using that small end there. And so I'm going to check 1, we're going to check 2, we're going, alright, so 3, I got some binding. Alright, 3 is set, 4 is binding, 4 is set, so 1 is loose, 2 is binding, and we're open. So again, another 140 that's got, or 130 that's got standard pins in it. And this is what you're going to start encountering. Is you're going to start encountering some locks at these belt levels that can be really easy to open, and some that can be a real pain in the butt to open. So I would recommend, you know, the 130, 140s are really good locks to go with. You can learn a lot about lock tolerances with these as well. The Brinks is really good. I do like this Brinks 164. The catch with this one is these do have the small pins on it, so you do want to be a little careful with that. The American Lock 520 is a good one. It does have 4 standard pins in it, and the nice thing about this lock is that you can, and I was looking for my tension bar and it was in my hand all this time. You can still use bottom of the keyway tension with the American 5200 here. It gives you a, it restricts the space a little bit, but you can still get enough in there where you can get into this and that. This does have the anti-bump pin in it, so I do recommend, trying it and just kind of getting used to it. But the lock that I recommend you to go with your yellow belt is the Master Lock 930. And there's a couple different reasons why I recommend the 930. It's a 5-pin lock, so you're going to start working with 5 pins. And when you hit like the green belt and higher, you're dealing with 5 or more pins at that. So getting used to a 5-pin lock early is good. The other thing is that this is a guttable lock. And I'm actually going to really start encouraging people at the yellow belt level to start practicing gutting your lock. And there's a couple of reasons why I recommend that. When I started, I was of that mentality where, geez, I'm just getting into lockpick. I'm not going to be taking locks apart. I don't see the need for it. And boy, was I wrong. It is a extremely useful skill to have, and it tells you a lot about the lock. In fact, if you're going for your belts officially, when you go for your green belt level lock, you actually do have to disassemble and reassemble the lock that you pick. So getting used to disassembling your lock early, I think, is a big benefit. And the Master Lock 930 is actually a really good lock to do that with. So let's go ahead and do that in this video here. I do have a video where I do go through about repinning a lock, so I'm just going to go through and gut and reassemble this lock. And to do that, we need some more tools than what we would normally use just by picking locks. So what you want is you want a pinning mat. Now, if you don't have a pinning mat, what you can do is you can use a cardboard that's got those the grooves in it. That's a really good piece with it. You do want a pair of tweezers, and I do recommend getting pinning tweezers. I really like the Sparrow pinning tweezers. These are just easy to use. I really like them. But there are a bunch of different brands out there. You can get some that match your style and all of that. And you're going to want to have a plug follower. Now, you can get 3D printed plug followers, or what you can actually do is you can get just a wooden dowel and cut that down and use that. So I'm actually going to use the wooden dowel in this video. This is what I would use on my master locks all the time. And actually what I did on mine was I did this little groove on it to kind of help set with the pin placements in that. It made it just a lot easier. And depending on the lock, this is good for like the American Lock, Master Lock, and that. But if I'm going with something like my Lockwood here, or if I'm going like with the Schlage core here, this is going to be too thin. You do want to get different sizes for your plug followers, and so 44 Delta does sell some really nice plug followers that are different sizes in that. So I would recommend getting those. Those are good. You can get a really nice plug follower from Covert Instruments. This is the Easy Loader. I recommend getting this guy because I love it. I love those little balls that fit into the pinholes and all of that. It just makes loading it so much easier. But in this video, we're going to work with those. You're going to need something to remove the C-clip on the lock or on the cylinder. So I've got the gutting wrench from Sparrows here. This is a really good tool. Screwdriver works just as well if you don't want to go out and invest in that right away. And then the other thing I recommend are shims. All right. Um, if you look at my community postings on my YouTube channel, you'll see that I just posted, Oopsies video on Lock 98 Pro that I just had. And so a shim is actually a really good tool to start learning how to use early in that. So and then the other thing that you'll also want is a hex wrench collection and a screwdriver, Phillips head screwdriver. And that is because when you actually get your lock open, this lock here has a hex screw in it, but if I open up the other 930 I have here, you're going to notice that's a Phillips head in here. So there are some different screw sets depending on the locks and all that. So you'll need kind of those different tools and all that. But let's actually try to pick this guy open first and see what we got here. So I'm going to change over to this mic so that we get the clickies with this one. All right, so now that we're open, let's go ahead and take the core out of this. And that actually is pretty easy. What you want to do is you just remove the retaining screw here. So you just stick the wrench or the screwdriver down and just unscrew that. And what you got is you got this cap here that comes out. So I'm just going to flip that open, remove that screw. And what we have now is we take the retaining cap off. And so sometimes these guys are a bit of a pain to get off, but sometimes they come off really easily. And now we have our core here. So now we can just slide the core out. Now do be careful because some locks will have the locking mechanism pop out as well. And the locking mechanism is this component back here. That's the actuator and all of that. I'm not going to remove that in this video because I just want to do the gutting and then reassembling of that in this video. But down the road, that might be something that once you get really good with repinning the lock, you can now take that actuator out, and then you can remove the ball bearings, you can remove the shackle, just completely disassemble the lock and then reassemble it. And all that. Again, for the green belt, I think you need to do all of that for your green belt. So we're just going to leave that there for now. So now that we got this, we have our C-clip here that we want to remove. So we're going to go ahead and remove that. And the other benefit of learning how to do this early is that as you get locks that are repinnable, like the 930, you can get repinning kits. And rather than buying like a dozen Master Locks or a dozen Lock Pros or a dozen American locks, you can get one or two in a repinning kit. And now you have the capability of, making that lock into 100 locks and all that. So, all right, so now that we got that, what we're going to do is we're going to insert our key and rotate. And this is where we're going to start shimming. All right, so you're going to take your shim, and we're just going to slide this in through the back here. All right, right between the pins and the core. All right. And the idea behind that is, if I rotate this and say I rotated the lock like this, you can see that if I pull this core out, or if I put the fowler here, there's that gap there and pins are going to fall. So by shimming, it prevents those pins from falling into those gaps and all that. Um, so we're going to do that. We're going to now take our power and we're just going to push the core out. All right, so there we go. So here's our core, and there are key pins. And what we're going to do is let's go ahead and remove the key pins first. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take my my hook pick. I'm going to insert it. I'm going to raise them up so that that just raises the pins. It makes it really easy to grab. I'm just going to start with 5. Put that in number 5. And then put this into number 4, 3, 2, 1. We can actually drop 1 and put that in. And if you have like a pinning mat like this, I mean, you know, depending on how you do it, I like, when I'm doing videos, I like using this because I can raise it and show the pins and all that. But when I'm actually working without the video, I'll use this, and I'll actually then use the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm just so used of having like the 1 through 7 go this way rather than to the right. I just gotta get used to that. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and remove our driver pins, our security pins here. So what we're going to do is we're now going to just bring this out, pop that. We got the one here. We're going to go ahead and just pop that out. And we're just going to keep pushing, pop one out, grab it, and just keep going until you get all of the pins. All right? And then we're going to drop our springs. And so to drop the springs, we just flip it over. And I think we got all the springs. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4. Where did 5 go? There's 5. All right, so we got our 5 springs here. Always have extra springs around. I'll also try to link in the description the American Lock or the Master Lock American Lock pinning kit that I got off of Amazon. You know, it came with a whole bunch of extra key pins, driver pins, security pins, and springs. Having a lot of extra springs is handy because those springs can go flying. And so, you know, as you can see, there's like this one odd color here, and that's because I've had to replace it because of various, you know, dealings and all that. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and repin our lock. So what we're going to do is we're going to first throw in our springs. And this is where it can get a little fun. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to grab one here, and I'm going to kind of go down to pin 5 and drop that in, and then take another one, go to pin 4. And you can see why I'm recommending getting into this sooner rather than later, because, you know, with these locks, it is, you know, fairly straightforward once you know what you're doing. But the only mechanics you have to worry about at the yellow belt level is the pin cylinders. You don't have sidebars, you don't have anything else with these. And so getting used to this here kind of makes it so that when you actually hit the blue belt level and you're disassembling, say, like a medical that's got a sidebar in it, you know, it's not so much of a stress to learn because you already am comfortable in disassembling locks and pulling pins out and all that. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and pin our lock. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our power to pin 5, and I'm just going to grab the driver pin for 5 and drop that down in there, and then just push that in. And then I'm going to slide up so that the power is keeping pin 5 in place. And we're just going to repeat this for pin 4, pin 3, pin 2, and pin 1. Now, with this lock, it really wasn't important in terms of, keeping all the security pins in place because they're all standard driver pins. But if you're dealing with a lock that is, say, like Master Lock, like say if I look at my post office box lock here, this is master keyed. And so if I go to pull this apart, I need to know where all the different pins are, because if I mix up the pins that are above the key pin, it's not going to work. Or if you have, say, like special security pins that you want to keep track of in particular pin locations, and just getting into that habit is really good. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and repin our core here. And so I'm just going to start with 1, and then 2, and 3, 4, and 5. All right. So now we're ready to kind of put this back in place. Now, another thing that I would also recommend getting is something like this, that you can actually put the core of your lock in and have that on the table, because there have been many times where I put my cylinder here and I hit it and it rolls and it dumps all the key pins. And so just having that there just to protect it is nice. The other thing that you can do with this is, before you put this in, I always put the key in. And what you're looking for when you're doing that is you're wanting to make sure all the key pins are at the shear level. Like for example, if I say, let's take this guy out, and what happens if I replace them? Is that the same one? Yep, that's the same one. So let's actually go with, can I get, say, this guy out? Yep, there we go. Let's swap these two around. So if I made a mistake, so we can see that we've got one here that stays above the shear line, and then one that is below the shear line. And so if I go to insert this lock or this core in and lock it up, this key's not going to work with it. So my only recourse then is to either decode it so that I can cut a key or pick it open and all that. Now with a master lock, a yellow belt level, orange belt level, when you kind of get into in Locksport and that, it's not that big of a deal. But when you're in like the blue belt and you make this mistake, that's kind of one thing that I've run into, where I mispinned a blue belt level lock, and it was like, oh, that really hurt in terms of having to get it picked open and to fix that issue. Um, so I always just triple check the keying just to make sure that it is good. Alright, so we're good. So let me go ahead and change our focus here again. So now we're good to insert the core. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert our shim just part way. And what we're going to do now is we're just going to put the shim, rotate the core a little bit like this. And we're just going to push the core in with the shim, making sure that the shim stays in line. There we go. Pull our shim out. We can go through now and, oops. You know what I did? Nope, there we go. I think I made a boo-boo here. Nope, we're good. All right. I thought I maybe put that in backwards. I'm going to clip this. See if I can clip it. Yep, all right, we're clipped. Let's go ahead and, all right, I'm just going to check our pin alignment here. Yeah, that is backwards. Oops. All right, so I think this is a good video in terms of showing kind of some of the things that you do need to kind of keep track of, because I just accidentally put this on backwards with a casing and all that. I didn't keep track of that. That's one thing that you do want to keep track of. So let's go ahead and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the core out. Now, because I did mix this up, pin 6 here has a driver pin when that's not supposed to have a driver pin. So I'm just going to remove 6 and move it over to pin 1 here. I should say I did that on purpose to show a lesson and all that, but that was an honest mistake. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and put the core back in. Alright, now if I rotate, there we go, that's better. Alright, so let's go ahead and clip this. Alright, now let's try the key again. Alright, and just, yeah, that's looking a lot better there now. Alright. So now, to assemble the lock again, all you do is you just throw the core back in. Alright. And realign it to the proper side. Now, the way that I typically will do that is I will throw the retaining cap back on and throw this guy in. And just to make sure that the keyway is in alignment with the protector here. And what I'm actually going to do first is, before I put that, I'm going to lock this in, and I'm going to test it just to make sure that the lock works, because if it doesn't, what happens is I can just then, pull the core out and unlock it by hand and fix whatever went wrong and all that. So let's go ahead, and this one's a bit fun to do with this. There we go. And what we're going to do now is throw our retaining clip back in here. Alright, and now we have a functional lock again. Alright, so that's the yellow belt level video here for you all. So I hope everybody enjoyed this video and found it informative. I know I talked about a lot. I will do chapters so you can go through and click the different topics that I covered and all of that. Our next level will be the orange belt video, so I'm hoping to have that within the next couple, 2-3 weeks and all that. So I hope everybody enjoyed the video. Do feel free to like and comment and subscribe to my channel. And as always, I hope everyone has a beautiful day, and I will see you all later.